Let's look at this function. F of x equals x squared plus 2x minus 8 over x squared minus 4. All right, I want to determine what types of discontinuities I have here. So what do I need to do? Factor what?
X plus 4, x minus 2. X minus 4, x plus 2. X plus 4, x minus 2.
Okay, so what can I do now? The x minus 2's cancel, which tell me I have what type of discontinuity? I have a removable discontinuity at x equals 2. Where do I have a vertical asymptote? I probably won't take off this time, but you need to begin to do that. Where do I have a vertical asymptote? At x equals negative 2. That is my vertical asymptote. Okay? Let's find the limit as x approaches 1 from the left of x squared minus 3x over x minus 1. And we're not going to look at the graph for this. I want to see if we can figure out what's happening here. So in this particular case, if we could look at it, if we plug in a 1, are we going to get 0 over 0? Will we get indeterminate form?
You get 1 over 0.
We get 1 over 0, so it's not indeterminate. It means what about the graph?
Actually, you get negative.
It means we have what in the graph? If we get a constant over 0, that tells us what? We have a vertical asymptote where?
Whatever the answer
At x equals 1. Okay, so I know that on my graph I'm going to have a vertical asymptote at x equals 1. I want to see if we can determine what's happening. How are we approaching the graph? Is it going to negative infinity or is it going to positive infinity? And we can do that by just thinking about some test points. I'm going to take this function and I'm going to factor the numerator because it makes it a little bit easier to plug in test points. Now let's see where we are if x is 0. What's the y value if x is 0?
0.
It's 0. I'm going to choose one more test point, and we'll just use one that's easy. If x is negative 1, I'm going to have a negative times a negative over a negative. So will that give me a positive number or a negative number? That gives us a negative number. I don't really care what it is. A negative times a negative over a negative.
Yeah, it'd be a positive over a negative.
So we get a negative number. I don't care what it is. I just want to know what's the limit as x approaches 1 from the left. So if this number's less than this one, it looks like we're probably headed to positive infinity. Now let's see what happens if we find the limit as x approaches 1 from the right. Coming this way. Let's just choose a couple of test points. I'm not looking for exact numbers. Okay, so if we choose 2, we have a positive times a negative over a positive. So is that going to give me a negative or a positive?
Negative.
A negative number. What if x is 3? What do I get?
Negative. Positive.
If x is 3, we get 0.
Yay,
So, as x approaches 1 from the right, we're going to negative infinity. So that's one way that you can tell what's happening on a graph. Find your asymptotes and then try to determine, are we increasing without bound or are we decreasing without bound? And you can do that with a couple of test points around the vertical asymptote.